Alright guys, it's me again, and I had quite a few requests on doing a tractor history. I did a combine history about the different types of combines that this farm has had over the past couple years. Actually quite a few years, and a few of you said that I should do a tractor history, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a tractor history, or basically just go through all the tractors that we had throughout the years. And this is way before my time, obviously. So what you're looking at right now is an F12 Farmall tractor. I know absolutely nothing about this tractor because it was not around when I was on the farm, obviously. But just by looking at it, it looked like it took quite a bit to manage. Simple, but probably pretty hard to, I would say, steer, because I'm assuming there wasn't power steering or whichever. But anyway, this was the first tractor that the farm had. We had I believe we had an I believe we had two of these, I think. One was for planting, and then we had a planting tractor as well, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But this was the first tractor that the farm had. It replaced walking behind a horse. So this was the F12 Farmall tractor. And then as time went by, we then upgraded to a Farmall H, and then a couple years later they kept the H and bought a Farmall M. Now the Farmall H was the planting tractor. That was the small tractor that the farm had. They used it to basically plant everything. Plant the corn, plant the beans, do whatever. I do believe they used this to cultivate because it was a smaller tractor, but do not quote me on that. I could be wrong. They might have even cultivated by hand, I'm not too sure. But anyway, this was the first red tractor that my grandpa had. It was still a Farmall tractor, but it just had it was red. And he also bought it used. Had a crank on the front, just like this one. You could crank it, pull start it, or it also had a foot pedal to start it with as well. Now I don't know if that came with the tractor or not, but we still have the H, and we still have the M as well. We have both of these tractors in our barn still, and they both have foot starters. So I do not know if that was custom or if that came with the tractor, or I'm not too sure. But anyway, this was the Farmall H, and then this was the M. My grandfather bought this in 1948, and I do believe that his tractor was a 44, so he bought this when it was 4 years old. And this tractor was what he used to work all of his ground with. It pulled the plow, it pulled the disc, it did all of his tillage. This tractor was a step up from the H. It was a little bit bigger. They look exactly the same, just one was an H, one was an M, and one was just a little bit bigger. So it was literally the exact same tractor, just a step up, a couple extra horses. Now notice this barrel right here, or this little round part. That was used to spin a belt, which then rotated a great big blade, and you could cut big chunks of firewood with it, or if you wanted to clear land and cut trees, you were able to put a belt on that right there, that circular part, and you were able to spin a blade and cut firewood with it, or cut big logs. But literally, the M and the H were an identical tractor, just one was bigger. And this lever, this long lever right here, that kind of goes on an angle, that was your hydraulics. And then the throttle was up top. The lights were in between your legs. And this was a stick shift. The both H and the M are both stick shifts, which everything was stick shift back then. But it had a clutch, obviously, to shift, and it had 2 brakes. There was an individual brake that stopped each individual tire, so you could turn sharp. Or if you pushed both of them in, it stopped both tires so that you could slow down while transporting the tractor up and down the road. H did the same thing. So they also had a Farmall Super M, which was a Farmall M like this, but it was an even bigger tractor. But they were both called Farmall M's. So, moving on. After my grandfather had those tractors for quite a few years, he then upgraded to a John Deere 4010. This was my great-grandpa's tractor also, along with the 2 Farmalls that I just got done talking about. The F12 was my great-great-grandfather's tractor. But after they went through those tractors, they then upgraded to a 4010. This was the main horse for quite some time. And then they also bought a John Deere 4020. And for a while, they had both pairs of tractors, just like this. So it was kind of a pattern. My grandpa had 2 identical tractors. Just one was a step up. The H was red. The H looked just like the M, just a step up. And just like these John Deeres, they were the exact same thing. They look alike, but one was bigger, just like the Farmall. So I find that kind of funny how both of my grandpas were able to do that. But anyway, the 4010 was also the smaller of the tractors, obviously, and it was the planting tractor. It did all the planting, and then the 4020 was made was bought for tillage. Pulled the plows, pulled the discs, turned over dirt. And then eventually they had these pair of tractors. They had both of these tractors for the longest time. And then they sold the 4010 and kept the 4020. This is actually a graduation gift that I'm getting once I graduate from college. If any of you guys have not seen the video, I did a video about our 4020 that we have. It's a 1968 John Deere 4020. It looks just like this, only it has a yellow umbrella on it. And on the front of the tractor, it has a yellow circular weight. Little story about that tractor. My grandpa bought this tractor brand new. My grandpa, my dad's dad, bought this tractor brand new in 1968. And my dad was 2 years old at the time, and he went with my grandpa to pick this tractor up. And we've had it since 68, and it actually got rebuilt here a little while ago. It was stuck in reverse, so we sent it in to get worked on. And it actually had a bunch of other stuff the mechanics found was wrong with it. So we got it fixed. So we put a chunk of change into this old girl. So we still have this tractor till this day, and we use it for odds and ends jobs like mowing ditch banks and pulls a rake every now and again. But since we don't have cattle anymore, this tractor is pretty much going to be retired unless we have ditch banks to mow. And it also pulled a manure spreader as well. But other than that, it just pretty much is an antique tractor that we can tell stories about. But we still use it to mow ditch banks. So I'm glad that I get to get this tractor once I graduate from college. It's going to be a graduation gift, and I'm proud to say I'm getting this tractor because it was my grandpa's. So I also plan to redo this tractor someday so that it looks fairly new again. So they sold the 4010 and they kept the 4020. And at that time they got their first 4-wheel drive, and that was a 2470. Obviously this was the tractor that worked all the dirt. They worked a lot of acres with this tractor, and I actually rode in a tractor like this. Tiny tractor compared to the tractors nowadays. It's a tiny tractor, but it got the job done. It did what it was supposed to do, and you can't ask for much more than that from a tractor. Getting the job done is all that matters. But anyway, we bought this tractor and we tilled all of our dirt with this for the longest time. And this kind of goes back to in my combine history video, I talk about a cousin of mine that worked on Massey Ferguson. He also worked on Case tractors as well. And this tractor had an issue with it, so we would always, whenever this tractor had an issue, we would take it down to my cousin who worked on the stuff, and he would work on it. But once he retired, that was when we kind of got away from Massey and Case and started using John Deere equipment, because the John Deere dealer that we go to is about 20-25 minutes away. It's not that long of a drive. So this was about the time that my dad was starting to take over the farm. He started farming on his own in 1990. I believe 1990, yes. They also had a Case 2290. This was the planting tractor, and this was the tractor that we tilled the dirt with. But this tractor eventually got worn out and got used and abused. So we got rid of the 4-wheel drive. We kept the 2290, and for the longest time we didn't have a 4-wheel drive tractor. For the longest time we had the 2290, which we planted with. We planted all the dirt with. And we had our 8400 that we have today. We bought that, and that tractor worked a lot of our dirt. So the 2290 pulled our 12-row planter that we still have today. We still have this tractor too. This was my dad's first tractor that he purchased on his own. It was a nice tractor when he bought it. It's still a nice tractor today. This tractor, we chop our stock still because we don't have a chopping corn head. Our combine does not have the horsepower or the gearbox to run one. So to get the trash chopped up, we still do the old-fashioned corn stalk chopping. So this tractor still gets hooked on to the chopper and pole, so it still sees the field every once in a while. But anyway, 8400 worked our ground for the longest time, and I believe, so we kept the 2290, we still have that. We still have the 8400. This is our main planting tractor now, but we did not have a 4-wheel drive for the longest time, and then in 2008 we were on our way to Florida, and there was an auction that my dad had heard of, and the auction was actually on our way to go to Florida. So we swung in to the auction and we bought another 4-wheel drive tractor again, and it was an 8650. Yeah, older tractor. The reason that we went with this tractor is because it was only worth about 30 grand, and we didn't want anything too expensive because it had been a while since we'd run a 4-wheel drive. But and also, since this was we bought this tractor fairly new also, so we didn't want to spend any extra money on newer equipment. So we got an 8650 because it had low hours on it and had a brand new motor in it because it had been blown up before. So it had a brand new motor in it, and we paid them $30,000 at the auction for it. So we then had this tractor for planting, and this tractor did all of our tillage. It pulled our field cultivator, and it pulled our deep ripper, which would be our Brent. BRENT. That's the name of our tillage disc, or the tillage ripper, I should say. So this pulled the field cultivator and the Brent. Did all of our tillage work with this. And one day, I was working ground, and I started seeing blue smoke coming out from where it says John Deere up underneath there, on this side and both sides of the engine. I was seeing blue smoke, and I was seeing white smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. So I knew right then and there something was wrong, so I pulled up to the road, and I had called Dad so that he could come look at the tractor, but I was pretty sure I knew what had happened. In my mind, I was telling myself, you blew a head gasket. About that time, Dad pulled into the field. He took a look at the motor, and he could see antifreeze on the engine block. And he told me that, yep, you blew a head gasket. So I idled the tractor down, and luckily the field I was at was right next door to my grandpa's shop. So I drove down the end rows of the field, up to the driveway that goes into the field that I was in, and I crossed the road into another field that butts up against my grandpa's shop. So I was able to avoid taking this old girl down the road. So anyway, I went down the end rows of that field, and I pulled in behind my grandpa's shop, and I parked the tractor and shut her down. And a couple days later, we pulled her up onto our landau trailer that we have, 40-foot landau trailer, binded her down, and we hauled her home. And we pulled her inside, we backed it in, popped the hood, and started tearing her apart. I had the turbo off. I had the exhaust that goes into the air intake off. I had half the engine torn apart. This happened such a long time ago. I was trying to remember what I had torn apart. But anyway, I had half of the motor out. And the next morning, Dad went out and started tearing the other half apart. And he handed me the exhaust manifold. And I set it down on the ground, and I heard him say, "Well, the tractor's junk." And I looked up and I said, "What do you mean the tractor's junk?" I looked down, I climbed up the ladder, and I looked on top of the engine block, and there was a crack in the engine block. We weren't gonna take any risks of welding it and trying to fix it ourselves, because odds are it would have cracked again. So, with decent tires on it, and at scrap value, it was only worth about $6,000. Even though the tires were good, we were hoping to get more out of it, but they would only give us $6,000 for scrap. So we pumped all the fuel out of it because it had a full tank in it. Pumped all the fuel out of it. Well, not all of it, most of it. They had enough to get it moved around. And actually, no, it was still tore apart when they hauled her out of here, so we pumped all the fuel out of it. And we were scrambling around trying to look for a replacement four-wheel drive. And a couple years ago, we had such a dry season that the ground was so hard that this old girl just didn't have enough horsepower to pull our deep ripper. Because this tractor only has, I think, 125 horses underneath the hood. I believe. I could be wrong. It could be more, but I think it's 125. We were scrambling around looking for a replacement tractor, And when we had this tractor, like I said, it didn't have enough horses to pull through the really hard dry dirt that we have, because we have clay loam dirt. And this tractor would just bog down, get down to 1800 RPMs. And so we went to our John Deere dealership and we rented the 9400 that we have now. We rented it, got all of our dirt worked, sent her back. And this happened before the 8650 blew up. But anyway, we took the 9400 back and continued using this tractor. Well, then it blew up, and we were scrambling around to look for a tractor. Well, this tractor was still sitting up at John Deere. They wanted $86,000 for it. The front 4 tires were good, but the back 4 tires were bad. So for a while we just kept on looking for tractors because we didn't want to put the money into the tires, because the tires are expensive. So we continued to keep on looking, and my dad was down at Deere one day, and we're friends with the salesman. We're pretty good. We're pretty well known at the dealership. And my dad got to talking about this tractor and was explaining to the salesman that he would be interested in this tractor if the tires on the rear were good. So the salesman said, well, I'll lower the price of this tractor. And he reduced the price of the tractor. Well, Dad liked the sound of that, and the salesman also had a couple other deals that were thrown into the actual deal of buying this tractor, but we're not going to get into that those details, because I just don't feel like I should be saying talking about our financial stuff on here. But anyway, my salesman hooked my dad up pretty good, and we were able to buy our 9400 that we have now. So with that being said, the 8400 and the 9400 are our 2 main tractors that we have today. So that pretty much does it for the tractor history. So I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Don't forget to leave your feedback down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I hope to see you on the next one.